The dawn of humanity's arrival. The Krillian Empire had dominated the Outer Rim territories for nearly 2 centuries, their crystalline warships cutting through space like shards of broken glass. Their expansion had been methodical, calculated, and utterly ruthless. 17 civilizations had fallen to their advance, their worlds turned into resource extraction sites, their populations either enslaved or scattered across the galaxy as refugees. The Resistance Coalition, a fragile alliance of 7 remaining free species, had been fighting a losing battle for the past 43 years. Commander Valaris of the Anthorian fleet stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance, watching another star system fall to Krillian control on the tactical display. Her 4 eyes dimmed with exhaustion as she processed the data streaming across her console. The numbers were devastating. 3 more colony worlds evacuated. 16,000 civilian casualties. The coalition fleet had lost another 12 vessels in the retreat. At this rate, they would run out of ships, soldiers, and hope within 6 standard cycles. The emergency council session began at the 19th hour. Representatives from each member species materialized as holographic projections around the circular chamber. The Vorthians, with their luminescent skin pulsing anxiously. The Drexim, their massive frames barely fitting within the projection parameters. The silicate mines, geometric patterns shifting with computational stress. The Morphids, constantly changing form as their anxiety manifested physically. The Peloran birds, their feathers ruffled in distress. The Aquarian delegates, suspended in their floating water spheres. And Valaris herself, representing what remained of the Anthorian military command. Chancellor Dravak, eldest of the Vorthian delegation, initiated the session with a statement that sent ripples of shock through the assembly. The coalition had made contact with a species that had remained isolated since achieving faster-than-light capability nearly 70 years ago. They called themselves humans, and they inhabited a yellow star system in a relatively unexplored sector designated as Sol. Initial diplomatic exchanges had been promising, but the humans had steadfastly maintained their position of neutrality regarding galactic conflicts. Valaris felt her secondary heart skip when Dravak revealed the true purpose of the session. The coalition was preparing to send a final delegation to Earth, to make one last desperate plea for intervention. The alternative was unthinkable but inevitable. Within 2 cycles, the coalition would collapse, and the Krillian Empire would control everything. The human homeworld designated Earth was unlike anything the coalition delegates had encountered. As their diplomatic vessel approached the 3rd planet from Sol, they observed a world teeming with diversity. Vast oceans covered most of the surface, interrupted by 7 major landmasses, each hosting different climate zones and ecosystems. The atmospheric composition was rich in oxygen and nitrogen, supporting what appeared to be an incredibly complex biosphere. Orbital stations ringed the planet, along with industrial facilities and defense platforms that, while primitive by coalition standards, showed remarkable engineering ingenuity. The delegation was granted permission to land at a facility the humans called the Global Assembly Complex, located in what they referred to as Switzerland. As the ship descended through the atmosphere, the delegates caught glimpses of human civilization. Sprawling cities with structures reaching toward the sky. Networks of transportation systems crisscrossing continents. Agricultural zones that demonstrated sophisticated environmental management. For a species so young to spacefaring culture, humanity had achieved remarkable planetary organization. Director Sarah Chin greeted the delegation with a professionalism that impressed Valaris immediately. The human woman stood approximately 1.7 meters tall, with dark hair pulled back from a face that conveyed both intelligence and determination. Her skin was a warm brown tone, and her eyes held a depth that suggested she understood far more than she revealed. Around her stood representatives from various human nations, their diversity of appearance indicating significant genetic variation within the species. The presentation chamber was arranged in a circular configuration that accommodated both human and alien physiologies. Valaris noticed the attention to detail, the way the humans had researched coalition species requirements and adapted their facilities accordingly. Temperature zones varied across the room. Atmospheric processors adjusted local compositions. Seating accommodations matched each species' unique anatomy. These humans were thorough in their preparations. Chancellor Dravok began the presentation with historical context, projecting images of the galaxy before the Krillian expansion. Thriving civilizations engaged in cultural exchange, scientific collaboration, and peaceful trade. Then came the images of war. Worlds reduced to slag. Populations fleeing in overcrowded transport ships. Children separated from families. Cities burning under crystalline bombardment. The coalition had fought valiantly, but they were losing. Valaris took over the tactical portion of the briefing, displaying fleet movements, casualty statistics, and projections for the coalition's remaining operational capacity. Her voice remained steady despite the emotions churning through her four-chambered circulatory system. She explained how the Krillian Empire operated with a hive-mind efficiency that made conventional military strategies nearly useless. Their ability to coordinate thousands of vessels simultaneously, to adapt to tactics in real time, to sacrifice individual units for collective advantage, had proven overwhelming. The human delegates listened in silence, their faces difficult to read. Valaris had studied human biology and psychology during the journey to Earth, learning that these beings experienced emotions through complex neurochemical processes similar to Anthorians but expressed them differently. They were capable of remarkable emotional control, masking their internal states behind neutral expressions. It made them unpredictable, which could be either advantageous or dangerous. Director Chen asked questions that revealed a strategic mind operating at multiple levels simultaneously. She wanted to know about Krillian command structures, resource acquisition patterns, technological capabilities, and long-term expansion projections. She inquired about coalition ship designs, weapon systems, shield technologies, and faster-than-light drive mechanics. She asked about civilian populations, refugee logistics, and the social structures of coalition species. Each question was precise, cutting directly to information that mattered for decision-making. The session extended through an entire Earth rotation cycle, what humans called 24 hours. Food and rest periods were provided, during which the coalition delegates observed human behavior more informally. They ate together, humans consuming a bewildering variety of organic materials prepared through numerous cooking methods. They engaged in casual conversation, displaying humor even while discussing serious topics. They showed compassion for the coalition's situation, asking personal questions about the delegates' experiences and expressing genuine empathy for the suffering described. Director Chen asked questions that revealed a strategic mind operating at multiple levels simultaneously. She wanted to know about Krillian command structures, resource acquisition patterns, technological capabilities, and long-term expansion projections. She inquired about coalition ship designs, weapon systems, shield technologies, and faster-than-light drive mechanics. She asked about civilian populations, refugee logistics, and the social structures of coalition species. Each question was precise, cutting directly to information that mattered for decision-making. The session extended through an entire Earth rotation cycle, what humans called 24 hours. Food and rest periods were provided, during which the coalition delegates observed human behavior more informally. They ate together, humans consuming a bewildering variety of organic materials prepared through numerous cooking methods. They engaged in casual conversation, displaying humor even while discussing serious topics. They showed compassion for the coalition's situation, asking personal questions about the delegates' experiences and expressing genuine empathy for the suffering described. When the formal session resumed, Director Chen stood before the assembly with a gravity that silenced the room. She explained that humanity had maintained neutrality not out of cowardice or indifference, but out of careful consideration of their responsibilities. Earth had only recently unified under a global governance structure after centuries of internal conflicts. Their expansion into their own solar system was barely beginning. They had never engaged in interstellar warfare. The decision to involve humanity in a galactic conflict was not one to be made lightly. But then Chen's expression hardened with determination. She recounted human history, speaking of countless conflicts that had shaped their civilization. Wars fought over resources, territories, ideologies, and beliefs. Struggles against oppression and tyranny. Resistance against overwhelming odds. Humanity had learned painful lessons about the cost of standing idle while others suffered. They had learned that isolation was not safety, merely delayed confrontation. They had learned that some threats, if left unchecked, would eventually reach everyone. The vote among human nations was not unanimous, Chen admitted. Many feared the casualties, the resource drain, the potential for retaliation against Earth. But the majority had decided that humanity could not stand by while an entire coalition of civilizations faced extinction. Earth would join the Galactic Coalition. They would commit their fleet, their soldiers, their technology, and their determination to the fight against the Krillian Empire. Valaris felt something she had not experienced in cycles. Hope surged through her system as she watched human military commanders begin coordinating with coalition tacticians. Earth spaceports transformed into hives of activity as ships were prepared for deployment. The human fleet, while smaller than coalition forces, incorporated technologies that coalition scientists found fascinating. Their approach to problems was unconventional, often bypassing traditional solutions in favor of creative alternatives that seemed illogical until proven effective. Admiral James Richardson assumed command of the Human Expeditionary Fleet, a force comprising 200 vessels ranging from massive carriers to nimble destroyers. Richardson was a career military officer with experience in Earth's various regional conflicts before unification. His reputation suggested a commander who favored aggressive tactics combined with meticulous planning. During the joint strategy sessions, he demonstrated an ability to absorb information rapidly and synthesize it into actionable plans. The integration of human forces with the coalition fleet proceeded with surprising smoothness. Human engineers worked alongside coalition technicians, sharing knowledge and adapting systems for compatibility. Human pilots trained in coalition fighter craft while coalition warriors familiarized themselves with human weapons. Cultural exchange programs helped species understand each other beyond military necessity. Valaris found herself genuinely enjoying conversations with Captain Martinez, a human tactical officer whose sense of humor somehow made the dire situation feel more manageable. As the combined fleet prepared for departure from Earth's orbital space, Valaris stood beside Admiral Richardson on the bridge of humanity's flagship, the Indomitable. Through the viewing ports, she could see Earth suspended against the black void, a blue and white sphere teeming with life and potential. Richardson noticed her gaze and smiled, a human expression indicating positive emotion. He spoke about Earth's history, about how humans had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times through warfare, environmental destruction, and social collapse. But they had survived, adapted, and ultimately chosen cooperation over continued conflict. That resilience, that refusal to surrender in the face of extinction, was what humanity would bring to the coalition. The fleet jumped to hyperspace in a coordinated sequence that sent ripples through subspace detectable across multiple sectors. 200 human vessels alongside 347 coalition ships, the largest combined force assembled since the war began. Their destination was the Threshold sector, where Krillian forces were preparing a final assault on the coalition's core worlds. The 5-hour war. The Threshold sector earned its name from the ancient jump gate network that connected 17 star systems through artificially stabilized wormholes. Control of the sector meant control of rapid transit across a significant portion of the galaxy. The Krillian Empire had been systematically capturing the gates over the past 8 cycles, and only 3 remained in coalition hands. Intelligence reported that a massive Krillian fleet was gathering for a decisive strike that would sever coalition territory in half. The combined human coalition fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Threshold sector in a formation that immediately drew tactical objections from coalition commanders. Traditional doctrine called for a defensive sphere that maximized overlapping fire arcs and shield coverage. Instead, Admiral Richardson had arranged the fleet in a scattered pattern that appeared vulnerable to concentrated attack. Multiple coalition officers questioned the strategy, but Richardson requested trust and patience. Valaris monitored the sensor displays from her position aboard the Eternal Vigilance, tracking the Krillian response to their arrival. As predicted, the Empire's hive mind coordination allowed them to react with frightening speed. Within minutes, over 600 crystalline warships were breaking orbit from captured worlds and converging on the Coalition position. The Krillian vessels moved in perfect synchronization, their formations geometrically precise as they accelerated to attack velocity. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for generations. As the Krillian fleet committed to their attack vector, the human vessels executed a maneuver that defied conventional tactical wisdom. Rather than reinforcing defensive positions, they scattered further, each ship or small group moving on seemingly random trajectories. Coalition commanders watched in confusion as the human fleet appeared to dissolve its cohesion entirely. Then the trap revealed itself. The Krillians, operating with hive mind efficiency, had optimized their approach based on the fleet's initial positioning. They had calculated optimal firing solutions, planned boarding actions, and allocated forces to maximize casualties. But humans did not think like a hive mind. They thought like individuals who could coordinate without predictability. Each human ship group had multiple contingency plans, capable of adapting independently to changing conditions. The human vessels had deployed thousands of small, nearly undetectable sensor drones throughout the sector during their scattered movement. These drones created a real-time tactical network that fed information simultaneously to every ship in the human fleet. While Krillian forces saw individual targets, humans saw the entire battlefield as a single, integrated system. They had turned the Krillians' coordination advantage against them. Admiral Richardson's voice transmitted across all coalition frequencies with calm authority. He explained the strategy in simple terms. The Krillian hive mind made decisions through collective processing, which meant there was a slight but measurable delay between observation and coordinated response. Humans would exploit that delay by creating tactical situations that required immediate individual responses, overwhelming the hive mind's processing capacity with too many simultaneous unique threats. The human attack commenced with a precision that stunned coalition observers. Missile salvos launched not at Krillian ships, but at specific points in space calculated to force evasive maneuvers. Energy weapons fired in patterns designed to herd enemy vessels into predetermined zones. Electronic warfare systems bombarded Krillian communications with carefully crafted interference that degraded hive mind coordination without completely severing it, forcing the Empire's commanders to waste processing capacity on signal filtering. Within the first hour, the Krillian formation began showing signs of stress. Ships collided with each other during evasive maneuvers. Weapons fire hit allied vessels as targeting solutions lagged behind actual positions. The geometric precision that made Krillian fleets so effective became a liability as human tactics exploited the rigidity of coordinated movement. Individual Krillian vessels were superior to human ships in firepower and shielding, but humans were not fighting individual duels. Valaris watched a human destroyer group execute a maneuver she would have considered suicidal. 3 ships dove directly into a Krillian formation, attracting concentrated fire from dozens of enemy vessels. Their shields collapsed within seconds, but before they could be destroyed, they released electromagnetic pulse charges that temporarily disabled Krillian shields in a massive radius. Simultaneously, human fighters that had been hiding in the destroyer's sensor shadows launched kinetic penetrator rounds that punched through the exposed Krillian hulls. The destroyers survived with critical damage, but they had eliminated 8 Krillian capital ships in exchange. This pattern repeated across the battlefield. Human forces accepted risks that coalition doctrine considered unacceptable, but those risks were calculated with precision. Every loss was an investment that yielded disproportionate returns. The humans fought with a controlled aggression that made each engagement a tactical lesson in exploiting enemy weaknesses. 2 hours into the battle, coalition forces received new orders from Admiral Richardson. Human vessels would continue their disruption tactics while coalition ships executed a coordinated strike on specific Krillian command vessels identified by the human sensor network. The plan relied on coalition ships' superior long-range weaponry combined with human tactical intelligence. Valaris found herself coordinating her vessel with 5 other Anthorian cruisers and a Drexim battleship, all targeting a single Krillian flagship that human analysis identified as a critical node in the hive mind's command structure. The strike succeeded beyond expectations. With human forces keeping the Krillian fleet fragmented and reactive, coalition heavy weapons found their marks. The targeted flagship shattered under concentrated bombardment, and immediately, a ripple of confusion spread through nearby Krillian vessels as local coordination degraded. Human ships exploited the chaos instantly, destroying ships that lost formation cohesion before the hive mind could compensate. This became the pattern for the next 2 hours. Human forces created tactical chaos through unpredictable maneuvers and targeted disruption. Coalition forces delivered killing blows with their superior firepower. The Krillian fleet, designed for overwhelming enemies through coordinated numerical superiority, found itself unable to bring that superiority to bear effectively. They were being defeated not through superior technology or greater numbers, but through a fighting philosophy they could not comprehend. The critical moment came 4 hours and 37 minutes into the engagement. Human intelligence analysts, processing data from their sensor network, identified the location of the Krillian hive mind central coordination node within the sector. It was not a ship or station, but a biological construct hidden in the debris field of a shattered moon. The construct linked Krillian commanders across the sector, allowing their unprecedented coordination. Admiral Richardson made a decision that exemplified human tactical thinking. He committed 60 human ships, nearly a third of his fleet, to a single strike mission. The vessels formed a spear formation and accelerated to combat velocity directly toward the moon's debris field. Krillian forces recognized the threat and redeployed to intercept, but they were too scattered from hours of asymmetric combat. Human ships tore through desperate defensive formations, accepting devastating casualties but maintaining momentum. 23 human vessels reached the coordination node. They unleashed every weapon in their arsenal simultaneously, from antimatter missiles to plasma cannons to experimental directed energy weapons that Earth's scientists had developed but never deployed. The biological construct, never designed to withstand direct military assault, disintegrated in a cascade of explosive decompression. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic for Krillian forces. Without central coordination, the hive mind fragmented into isolated groups operating on local processing only. Ships that had moved with perfect synchronization suddenly became independent vessels commanded by individual Krillian officers with limited tactical authority. The overwhelming numerical advantage evaporated as cohesion collapsed. Coalition forces, following prearranged signals from Admiral Richardson, immediately shifted to aggressive assault formations. For the first time in 43 years of warfare, they saw Krillian ships retreating in disorder. Valaris commanded the eternal vigilance in pursuit of a Krillian battle group that was desperately trying to reach the jump gate. Her weapons found their marks repeatedly, and the satisfaction of finally, turning the tide of war filled her with fierce joy. 5 hours and 12 minutes after the engagement began, the last Krillian vessel in the threshold sector either surrendered or fled through emergency hyperspace jumps to unknown coordinates. The sector was secured. 3 jump gates, 17 star systems, and countless billions of civilian lives were saved. The combined human coalition fleet had achieved what coalition forces alone had failed to accomplish in 4 decades of warfare. They had decisively defeated the Krillian Empire in a single engagement. The aftermath brought a strange silence to the fleet communications. Coalition commanders struggled to process what had occurred. Victories had been so rare, so costly, that experiencing such a comprehensive triumph felt surreal. Slowly, communications channels filled with expressions of gratitude, respect, and wonder directed at the human forces. Admiral Richardson addressed the fleet with characteristic humility. He emphasized that victory belonged to all species present, that coalition forces had provided the firepower essential to the win, and that humanity had simply brought a different perspective to shared challenges. But privately, speaking with Valaris on a secure channel, he revealed a deeper truth. Humanity had studied war extensively because they had practiced it extensively on themselves for thousands of years. They understood conflict in ways that more peaceful species did not. The celebrations were brief because strategic analysis revealed the larger implications. The Krillian Empire remained formidable across dozens of sectors. But the threshold victory demonstrated that they were not invincible. More importantly, it showed that their greatest strength, the hive mind coordination, was also a critical vulnerability when properly exploited. The war was far from over, but for the first time, coalition species could envision actual victory rather than mere survival. Director Chen transmitted a message from Earth that reached the fleet several hours later due to the communication time lag. She expressed pride in humanity's warriors and sorrow for those who had fallen, 37 ships lost with all hands during the final assault. But she also reaffirmed Earth's commitment to the coalition and to ending the Krillian threat permanently. Humanity had entered the war late, but they would see it through to whatever end awaited. Valaris stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Vigilance, watching human and coalition repair crews work side by side on damaged vessels. In the distance, Earth's fleet gathered for the jump back to coalition core space, where they would help plan the next phase of the campaign. She thought about how the galaxy had changed in just 5 hours, how a single species had transformed despair into hope through courage, ingenuity, and a willingness to fight for others. The war would continue, but the outcome was no longer predetermined. The Krillian Empire had dominated through coordination and calculated aggression. Now they faced an enemy who fought with controlled chaos and adaptive creativity. The coalition had gained not just powerful allies, but a new way of thinking about warfare itself. And somewhere in the vast empire's territory, Krillian commanders were surely analyzing their defeat and realizing that everything had changed when humanity decided to enter the fight.